The fluorescent lights of Gateway International Airport hummed, casting a sterile glare on the swirling chaos of arrivals. Travelers wrestled with luggage, voices echoing in a dozen languages, the clatter of rolling suitcases, the faint smell of jet fuel and stale coffee hanging in the air. And then, there was Jimin Park. She stood apart, an island of calm precision amidst the human tide. It wasn't just her stillness that drew the eye, but the breathtaking elegance of her attire, a modern hanbok, the silk geogri top shimmering like pale dawn, paired with a chima skirt of deep, lustrous emerald. Fine, hand-stitched embroidery, perhaps a subtle crane motif near the collar, hinted at its artistry. It flowed around her like liquid moonlight, a stark contrast to the utilitarian backdrop of GIA. But the gazes fixed on her weren't merely curious or admiring. Flanking her, their stances rigid, their faces impassive masks, stood two airport security officers. Their eyes, however, weren't impassive. They scanned her, a flicker of something cold, suspicion, annoyance, passing between them. Their uniforms were crisp, their presence an undeniable, jarring note against the soft grace of her traditional Korean dress. Why this focus? Why the sudden, intense scrutiny? This wasn't random. You could feel it, a targeted beam in the diffuse airport buzz. See, Jimin wasn't just another weary traveler navigating customs. Far from it. She was the head of global strategy for Novatech Dynamics, a titan in the Korean tech scene known for its audacious leaps. Jimin was Novatech's future, embodied. Sharp, driven, 30-something, carrying the weight of a deal that could redefine her company's future, and maybe even her own. A $50 million plus partnership was on the line, waiting for her signature just miles away. The culmination of months, no, years of relentless work, late nights fueled by ambition and kimchi jjigae. This wasn't just about circuits and code, it was bigger. It was about bridging worlds, weaving the intricate threads of Korea's rich heritage with the cutting edge of 21st century innovation. A bold vision, audacious even. And deeply personal to Jimin, a bridge she herself was meant to embody. Yet, here she was. Held. Questioned not for any transgression, but seemingly for the crime of being different. For daring to embody the very cultural pride her mission sought to celebrate. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Discrimination, raw and unexpected, had materialized under the harsh airport lights. You could almost taste the bitterness of it, the sudden chill that seeped into her bones despite the ambient warmth. Around her, the river of travelers flowed on, most oblivious, some casting brief, curious glances before hurrying away. Isolation pressed in. This journey, meant to be a triumph of connection, was starting with an act of profound disconnection. Anyone else might have erupted. Anger, frustration, tears, perfectly understandable reactions to being singled out, implicitly accused, under the cold gaze of authority and the curious stares of strangers. But Jimin? She held herself with a quiet, unshakable dignity. You could see the steel beneath the silk, the years of navigating boardrooms and cultural nuances reflected in her steady gaze. A flicker of disbelief in her eyes, perhaps, a tightening around her lips, but no outburst. Just a profound stillness, a centered strength that seemed to push back against the pressure. It was mesmerizing, really. Her composure wasn't passive, it was a shield, a statement. A refusal to be diminished. This moment, this unforeseen turbulence, wasn't just some unpleasant footnote to a business trip. No. It was the start of something profound. A journey none of them could have predicted, one that would force a confrontation with deeply ingrained prejudice and test the very limits of resilience. This is the story of that journey, of how one Korean businesswoman, armed with little more than her wits, her cultural pride, and an unwavering sense of self, navigated the storm. It's about finding strength in heritage and challenging the shadows of bias on a global stage. It's about Jimin Park. This is her story, a journey that began with a simple choice, woven with cultural significance, and culminating in a confrontation that would test her spirit and echo across continents. Let's delve into the heart of her mission. The mission and the symbol, weaving tradition into tomorrow. So, what exactly brought Jimin Park to this critical juncture, standing defiant yet composed under the scrutinizing gaze of Gateway International Security? What mission carried such weight that it demanded not just her sharp intellect, but a visible declaration of her heritage? The answer lay deep within the gleaming headquarters of Novatech Dynamics back in Seoul, and deeper still within the ambitious heart of the $50 million joint venture she was here to finalize. Jimin wasn't just a strategist, she was the head of global strategy, a position she'd carved out through relentless drive and an almost unnerving ability to see 10 steps ahead. They called her meticulous, sometimes even cold, but beneath the polished exterior beat the heart of someone fiercely dedicated. The pressure was immense. Novatech wasn't just counting on this deal with the American tech behemoth, Apex Innovations. The entire Korean tech industry watched, hoping this partnership would catapult them onto an entirely new global playing field. Failure wasn't simply a corporate setback, it felt like letting down a nation. Add to that the whispers in Novatech's corridors, rivals waiting for a misstep, executives who still weren't entirely convinced Jimin had the clout for a deal this massive. Yeah, pressure was an understatement. This Apex Innovations deal, it was a monster. More than $50 million was just the starting point. This joint venture aimed to fuse Novatech's revolutionary biointegrated AI with Apex's market dominance, creating something entirely new, something potentially world-changing. But amidst the dense legalese, the complex financial projections, and the intricate technology transfer protocols within the sprawling business contract, lay something unique. Tucked away, perhaps as Clause 7b, was a passage Jimin herself had fought tooth and nail to include. It spoke not of profits or patents, but of mutual cultural respect. It explicitly stated that the partnership valued Korea's unique traditional culture, committing both parties to promoting it positively on the global stage as a core value. To Jimin, this wasn't just lip service, it was the soul of the agreement, the element that elevated it beyond a mere transaction into a true meeting of worlds. Tradition and technology, hand in hand. And how do you embody that? How do you make such a clause breathe? The idea struck her not in a sterile boardroom, but late one evening, staring at a digital rendering of Novatech's sleek, futuristic interface juxtaposed with an image of her grandmother, decades ago, serene and graceful in a traditional Hanbok. The contrast wasn't jarring, it was harmonious. Suddenly, it clicked. The contract signing ceremony wasn't just a formality. It was a performance, a statement. And she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, what her costume needed to be. It wasn't impulsive. It was strategic planning manifest. She envisioned herself walking into that final meeting, not in the standard corporate armor of a Western business suit, but in Hanbok. A modern interpretation, yes, but undeniably Korean. A living symbol of Clause 7b. But conviction was one thing, corporate approval was another. She remembered the presentation vividly. The raised eyebrows of old Mr. Choi from finance, the nervous shifting of Lee Min-jun, her main internal rival. Is this appropriate, Ms. Park? Choi had rumbled, skepticism heavy in his voice. Is it wise to draw such attention to differences? Jimin had stood firm, her voice steady despite the tremor she felt inside. She laid out the logic, the contract's explicit language, the partner's stated respect, the powerful symbolism. This isn't about highlighting difference, Chairman Choi, she'd argued, her gaze unwavering. It's about celebrating the harmony we aim to create. It shows we believe in our own clause. It shows confidence, not divergence. It took persuasion, data on the growing global interest in Korean culture, and perhaps a timely nod from the CEO who saw the brilliance in its audacity, but she got the green light. It was official. The Hanbok she chose was perfect. Commissioned from a designer renowned for blending ancient techniques with modern aesthetics. The geography wasn't merely beige, it was the color of dawn sky over the East Sea, spun from silk so fine it seemed to catch the light. The chima, that deep, resonant emerald green, wasn't restrictive but flowed with a surprising freedom, cut along modern lines. Her hair would be swept up, held by a single pin of reclaimed silver, echoing the fusion of old and new. This wasn't just clothing. It was narrative. It was Hanbok symbolism writ large, the pale, innovative dawn meeting the deep-rooted, evergreen traditions of Korea. It was the first scene of the Novatech Apex innovation story, played out not on a screen, but on her own person. A walking, breathing testament to cultural respect and the beautiful potential when tradition and technology dance together. With the weight of expectation and the elegance of tradition literally on her shoulders, Jimin Park finalized the last details in Atlanta and prepared for the short flight to Los Angeles, unaware of the jarring dissonance that awaited her. The careful strategic planning, the symbolic depth of her attire, was about to collide with a very different reality. Whispers of admiration, shadows of arrival. The 5-hour flight from Atlanta to Gateway International should have been a smooth glide path into the culmination of Jimin Park's most ambitious project. Cocooned in the quiet luxury of first class, the drone of the engines a distant hum, she allowed herself a measure of fragile optimism. The battle within Novatech dynamics to even where this Hanbok had been won, now came the external test. Would the world embrace the symbol, or reject it? Early signs, aloft at 35,000 feet, were encouraging, small whispers of admiration that soothed the lingering anxieties. Shortly after takeoff, a flight attendant named Sarah, young with earnest blue eyes, paused by her seat. "Excuse me, ma'am," she began, a touch hesitant, "I hope you don't mind me saying, but your outfit is just stunning." "Truly. Is it for a special occasion?" There was genuine curiosity in her voice, none of the veiled judgment Jimin had half-steeled herself for. Jimin offered a polite smile, the kind honed by years of navigating cross-cultural business. "Thank you. Yes, it's quite an important business meeting today." She gestured slightly to the emerald skirt. "It's a hanbok, traditional Korean attire, though this one has a more modern design." "Hanbok," Sarah repeated, testing the word. "It's incredible. The fabric looks so rich. Is it comfortable for traveling?" "Surprisingly, yes," Jimin admitted. "The designer is very clever." A simple exchange, yet it felt like a small victory. Sarah wished her luck with genuine warmth, promising to bring extra water, her admiration leaving a pleasant afterglow. Later, the distinguished, white-haired gentleman beside her, who introduced himself as Mr. Harrison, finally lowered his copy of the Wall Street Journal. He wasn't just offering vague platitudes about the mystery of the Orient. No, his gaze was thoughtful, appreciative. "Forgive my staring," he said, his voice a low rumble, "but that shade of green is extraordinary. It reminds me of some Celadon pottery I saw at the Met in New York. Is there a particular significance?" Jimin felt a surge of quiet pride, different from the vague satisfaction after Sarah's comments. This was specific. Appreciative. "There is," she confirmed, explaining briefly the symbolism of evergreen strength and vitality in Korean culture, how the designer had chosen this specific hue to represent enduring tradition meeting modern dynamism, the very essence of the Novatech Apex joint venture. Mr. Harrison listened intently, nodding. "Remarkable," he concluded. "A powerful statement piece. I visited Seoul once, years ago. Left a deep impression. You have a beautiful culture." He returned to his paper, but the brief conversation resonated. This, Jimin thought, this is the kind of cultural appreciation I hope for from Apex. Understanding, not exoticism. She leaned back, watching the clouds drift far below. Maybe Mr. Choi and the nervous executives back at Novatech had been wrong. Maybe the world was ready. She pictured the meeting room at Apex Innovation's headquarters, visualized CEO Thompson reacting with Mr. Harrison's thoughtful respect. She saw the signing, the press photos, the Hanbok not as a curiosity, but as a respected emblem of the partnership's core values. It will work, she told herself, pushing away a fleeting, traitorous whisper of doubt. They will see the bridge we're building. The gentle hum of the plane, the validation from strangers, wrapped around her like a comforting cloak. Anticipation began to build, a hopeful rhythm matching the beat of her heart. The descent into the sprawling urban expanse of Los Angeles broke the spell. Gateway International Airport wasn't just big, it was immense, a concrete and glass behemoth teeming with anonymous lives. The calm bubble of first class popped the moment she stepped onto the jet bridge. Jimin navigated the long corridors, her practiced, confident stride eating up the distance. In one hand, she gripped the handle of her sleek briefcase, a custom Novatech design in brushed titanium, containing the precious original business contract documents and confidential presentation materials. In the other, a discreet, elegant shopping bag held the gift for Apex's CEO, a breathtaking Celadon vase, crafted by one of Korea's living national treasures. Down in the cavernous baggage claim hall, the atmosphere shifted again. The air thrummed with a different energy, impatience, weariness, the low roar of thousands of simultaneous conversations. Her Hanbok, predictably, drew attention. Glances lingered. Some curious, some openly admiring. She caught snippets, look, mom, beautiful. And felt that familiar warmth spread through her. This is the power of our aesthetic, she thought, a silent affirmation. This matters. The conveyor belt shuddered to life, spitting out bags in a relentless stream. Passengers surged forward, claiming their belongings, melting back into the crowd. Jimin waited. And waited. Her sleek black suitcase, however, remained stubbornly absent. A familiar knot of travel anxiety began to tighten in her stomach. Seriously? Not now. Please, not now. Minutes ticked by. The crowd around the carousel thinned. Just as genuine worry started to set in, a bright voice cut through the noise. Yuni. Is that Hanbok? Jimin turned. A young woman, probably college-aged, with bright eyes and trendy glasses, beamed at her. She looked Korean-American. Wow. It's gorgeous. My Halmini has one, for holidays, but yours is so modern. It's amazing to see someone wearing one here. Jimin felt an unexpected rush of warmth, a connection forged in shared heritage. Thank you, she smiled genuinely. I'm waiting for my luggage. It seems to be taking its time. Ugh, GIA baggage claim, the student rolled her eyes sympathetically. Good luck. But seriously, you look incredible. Fighting. She gave a small, encouraging fist pump and darted off as her own bag appeared. Yeah, Jimin thought, turning back to the still empty belt, the brief interaction buoying her spirits. There are good people everywhere. At that exact moment, her black suitcase finally trundled into view. Relief washed over her, potent and immediate. She quickly retrieved it, the anxiety dissipating. Okay. Back on track. Taking a deep, centering breath, she turned, pulling her rolling carrier, ready to head for the exit, for the car, for the final preparations before the biggest meeting of her life. Just as she took her first confident step towards the doors, a shadow fell abruptly across her path. The fragile sense of relief shattered instantly, replaced by a sudden, chilling premonition. The wall of prejudice, an encounter at Gate C. The fragile sense of relief shattered like dropped porcelain. The shadow belonged to a man stepping directly into her path, blocking her way to the exit. He wore the crisp, authoritative uniform of Gateway International Airport security, but there was nothing reassuring about his presence. His posture was stiff, almost confrontational, and his eyes, narrowed, assessing, swept over Jimin Park, lingering not on her face, but with undisguised disdain on the elegant lines of her Hanbok. His name tag read, Officer Miller. Hold it right there, ma'am, Miller's voice cut through the surrounding airport hum, sharp and edged with something unpleasant. Suspicion. Boredom curdled into aggression. He hooked his thumbs into his belt, planting his feet firmly. That's quite the getup. Looks a bit strange, don't you think? Gonna need some further testing here. Jimin froze, the handle of her rolling carrier suddenly cold in her hand. Strange. The word landed like a slap. After the warmth of Sarah the flight attendant, the respectful curiosity of Mr. Harrison, the shared pride with the young student, this felt like plunging into icy water. The whiplash was staggering. She took a careful, measured breath, forcing the practiced calm she used in high-stakes negotiations to settle over the sudden tremor of shock and rising anger. "Officer," she began, her voice meticulously level, professional. "Is there a problem? This is a hanbok, a traditional Korean dress. I'm here for a very important business meeting scheduled shortly." She kept her tone informative, non-confrontational, hoping reason might prevail. Hoping this was just a misunderstanding. Miller let out a short, sharp sound, halfway between a scoff and a laugh. It held no humor. "Han what? Never heard of it. Look, lady, anything unusual, anything out of the ordinary," his gaze pointedly raked over the voluminous emerald skirt, "gets extra screening. Standard procedure." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial, insulting stage whisper. "You're not trying to hide anything under all that fabric, are you? Looks awfully bulky down there. Plenty of room." Humiliation washed over Ji-min, hot and stinging. He wasn't just questioning her clothes, he was implying deceit, criminality. The careful construction of her composure threatened to crack. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, the angry retort clawing its way up her throat. "Don't react," a voice screamed inside her head. "Control. Think strategy. Clause 7b wasn't supposed to feel like this." The irony was bitter. She was wearing this very garment as a symbol of cultural respect, only to be met with blatant prejudice wrapped in the guise of official procedure. She risked a glance around. The river of travelers continued to flow towards the exits. A sea of mostly white faces, clad in jeans and sweaters and standard business attire, passed by unhindered, unquestioned. A few people cast sideways glances at the unfolding scene, a flicker of curiosity perhaps, before quickly looking away, unwilling to get involved. A man nearby fiddled with his phone, angling it slightly. Was he filming? The isolation felt absolute. She was the anomaly, the other, singled out purely for daring to look different, for wearing her heritage on her sleeve, quite literally. This wasn't standard procedure. This was racial profiling, ugly and undisguised, wielding the blunt instrument of perceived authority. The power imbalance was sickeningly palpable. Miller seemed to relish her silence, mistaking her controlled stillness for guilt or confusion. His eyes narrowed further, a predator sensing weakness. "Yeah, looks suspicious to me," he declared, his voice regaining its official, harsh tone. His attention shifted, zeroing in on the sleek, titanium briefcase in her hand. "All right, let's start with that bag. What's in there?" He tapped the smooth metal surface with a thick finger, leaving a faint smudge. "Need to check the contents. Open it up. Right here, right now." Ji-min's hand instinctively tightened on the handle. Inside that case lay the culmination of months of exhausting work, the original, signed counterpart of the Novatech Apex joint venture agreement, worth tens of millions, highly confidential technical schematics for their revolutionary bio-AI, sensitive market analysis reports, and nestled carefully within protective padding, the priceless celadone vase destined for Apex's CEO. Opening it here, on the grimy floor of the baggage claim, under the indifferent or hostile gazes of strangers, was unthinkable. A violation on every level: corporate security, diplomatic protocol, personal dignity. "Officer," she started again, her voice still remarkably steady, though the effort was immense. "This briefcase contains highly confidential corporate documents and sensitive materials related to an international business agreement. It cannot simply be opened in a public area." Miller smirked, a knowing, unpleasant twist of his lips. "Oh, confidential, is it? That's what they all say." He took a deliberate step closer, invading her personal space. She could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "Maybe you can't afford first class after all, flying around with confidential documents in your fancy dress." The cheap shot, questioning her status, her very right to be there, landed with brutal precision. The murmurs around them grew slightly louder now. More phones were subtly angled in her direction. The clicks were almost imperceptible, but Ji-min heard them, felt them like tiny barbs. Shame warred with a rising tide of pure, cold anger. Getting emotional now would only make things worse, would only give him the reaction he seemed to crave. But how to de-escalate? How to navigate this minefield of ignorance and aggression? Reason had failed. Politeness was being trampled. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a deliberate act of intimidation, fueled by prejudice she couldn't even begin to fathom. Was it her race? Her clothes? Her perceived foreignness? Did it even matter? The result was the same: humiliation, obstruction, and the looming disaster for the deal she carried in her hands. She realized with chilling clarity that Officer Miller wasn't interested in security. He was interested in power, in asserting his dominance over someone he'd already judged and found wanting. Logic wouldn't work here. Explanations were futile. Politeness had failed. Logic was useless. Trapped between the officer's intransigence and the ticking clock towards her crucial meeting, Ji-min knew she couldn't win this battle alone, not on his terms. This required a different kind of strategy altogether. A quiet strength, strategy amidst the storm. The wall of prejudice Officer Miller had erected was absolute, impenetrable by logic or politeness. Ji-min Park, strategist extraordinaire, recognized the futility of direct assault. Engaging with his blatant bias, his sneering dismissal, was playing his game, a game rigged against her from the start. Yet, she had to try the conventional route first, if only to demonstrate its failure. Drawing on reserves of composure she hadn't known she possessed, Ji-min kept her voice calm, betraying none of the turmoil raging within. "Officer Miller," she stated, meeting his hostile gaze directly. "Allow me to clarify. I have already passed through full security screening upon departure from Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson. My passport and first-class boarding pass, which you hold, verify my identity and travel details. The contents of my briefcase are commercially sensitive and subject to confidentiality agreements." She gestured towards a small, signposted room nearby. "However, if a secondary screening is deemed absolutely necessary under GIA regulations, I am willing to cooperate fully in that designated private security area, under the supervision of appropriate personnel and following official procedures. Opening confidential materials here, in public view, is simply not feasible or appropriate." Her words were measured, reasonable, a clear appeal to process and professionalism. Miller just waved a dismissive hand, the smirk deepening on his face. "Procedures. I decide the procedure here. And I say that bag gets opened. Now." He pointedly ignored her reference to the private room. He muttered something under his breath then, just loud enough for her to catch. "Fancy dress probably cost more than my paycheck. Bet she didn't earn it." The insult, adding class prejudice to the racial profiling, was another deliberate barb designed to provoke. Just then, a younger female officer, whose name tag read Bevins, cautiously approached Miller from behind. Ji-min had noticed her earlier, looking uncomfortable. "Sir." "Officer Miller." Evans began tentatively, her voice low. "Procedure states that unless there's specific, articulable suspicion." Miller whirled around, his face contorted in fury. "Shut up, Evans. Don't interfere. My judgment call, my scene. You got that? Get back to your post before I write you up." He radiated menace, silencing the younger officer with sheer authoritarian bluster. Evans visibly flinched, cast a quick, apologetic glance towards Ji-min, and retreated, shoulders slumped. A tiny spark of hope, that maybe not all airport security personnel were like Miller, sputtered and died within Ji-min. No, this was personal. This was Miller's show, fueled by his own toxic blend of bias and ego. That was it. The final confirmation. Reason was dead on arrival here. Ji-min's mind, trained for strategic pivots, shifted gears instantly. The objective changed. It wasn't about convincing Miller anymore. It was about outmaneuvering him. It was about time. Buying precious minutes until a different kind of power could be brought to bear. Emotional control, always her strength in the boardroom, became her critical weapon now. Do not escalate. Do not give him the satisfaction of seeing you unravel. Breathe. Focus. Her hand, surprisingly steady now, reached into her designer handbag and retrieved her sleek smartphone. The crowd noise seemed to fade as she focused intently on the screen. 2 calls. That was the strategy. First, the lawyers. She dialed the number for the top-tier Los Angeles firm Novatech kept on retainer, the one known for its ruthless efficiency and powerful connections. Mr. Davies, please. Ji-min Park calling. Urgent. A moment later, David, Ji-min, apologies for the direct call. I'm at GIA Arrivals, Terminal 4 baggage claim. Currently being unlawfully detained by Officer Miller, badge number 714, she invented the number smoothly. He's citing my attire, Hanbok, as suspicious, demanding access to confidential corporate materials without cause or proper procedure. Clear case of profiling. Requesting immediate intervention with GIA Command and Legal Department. The Apex signing is in less than 3 hours. Her voice was clipped, professional, betraying only the faintest tremor. The response was equally brisk, efficient. Assurances were given. Calls would be made. A senior airport manager would be dispatched. 1 down. Now, the harder call. Her father. Successful businessman, pillar of the Korean-American community, a man who had clawed his way up from nothing, battling prejudice every step of the way. A man whose quiet investment was part of the reason GIA had its newer, shinier international terminal. Would invoking his name help, or make things worse? It didn't matter. She needed his strength right now. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dialed his private number. Appa. Her voice caught, thicker than she intended. Ji-min. What's wrong? Your voice. His concern was immediate, cutting through the phone line. Appa. I'm at GIA. Baggage claim. There's a security guard. He stopped me. Because of my Hanbok. The words tumbled out, the carefully constructed dam of her composure finally cracking. He keeps saying, insulting things. He wants to search my briefcase, the contract signing. Appa, I don't know what to do. A single tear escaped, tracing a hot path down her cheek. Damn it. Silence stretched across the line. A heavy silence. In that moment, Ji-min pictured her father as a young man, facing down similar walls of ignorance, similar abuses of petty power. The sting of injustice was a familiar echo in their family history. The realization struck her, times change, but some shadows linger stubbornly. Then, his voice came back, calm, measured, but with an underpinning of cold, hard steel that she knew so well. Ji-min. Listen carefully. Stay exactly where you are. Do not say another word to that man. Do not move from that spot. And you do not hand over that briefcase. Do you understand? Yes, Appa. Good. I am bringing the entire legal team from Davies, Wright and Lee. We are leaving now. We will be there in 20 minutes. Maybe less. Until then, you just stand tall and wait. Let me handle this. Don't worry about a thing, daughter. She hung up, the finality in his tone a strange sort of balm. The fear that had been coiling in her stomach didn't disappear entirely, but it was overshadowed now by something else. A cold, sharp anger. A hardening resolve. Her hands stopped shaking. She subtly straightened her spine, lifting her chin almost imperceptibly. Officer Miller, who had been watching her phone calls with blatant suspicion, stepped forward again, smirking. Who you calling, huh? Mommy and Daddy. Making excuses. It's no use, lady. Nobody's coming to save you. He still taunted, still prodded, trying to get a reaction. But Ji-min was no longer engaging. Her focus was absolute. She clutched the titanium briefcase handle, her knuckles white. Her gaze fixed on a point somewhere beyond Miller's shoulder, unseen. She breathed slowly, evenly. Waiting. Every tick of the clock in the cavernous hall seemed amplified. The air thrummed with unspoken conflict, a brittle tension stretching thin. She held her ground, a silent, defiant symbol waiting for the storm she had summoned. The turning tide, power, presence, and accountability. The air thrummed with brittle tension, each second stretching into an agonizing minute. Ji-min Park remained motionless, a statue carved from silk and resolve, her gaze fixed ahead while Officer Miller radiated impatient hostility nearby. 10 minutes, maybe 12 crawled by since her father's galvanizing promise. Then, the first sign of official notice, not the cavalry she'd summoned, but two harried-looking men in GIA management blazers, alerted, presumably, by Mr. Davies' initial call to airport command. They conferred quickly with Miller, their expressions shifting from standard managerial concern to visible confusion, then back to a forced, placating neutrality as they turned towards Ji-min. "Ma'am," the taller one began, offering a tight, insincere smile. "Mr. Peterson, Assistant Terminal Manager. We understand there's been a slight misunderstanding regarding screening protocols. If you could just explain." He was clearly aiming for quiet de-escalation, trying to manage the situation before it attracted more attention. Too late. Because just as Peterson started his carefully worded inquiry, the atmosphere in the sprawling arrivals hall underwent a seismic shift. Outside, beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the distinct screech of tires braking hard in the restricted VIP arrivals zone cut through the ambient noise. Heads turned. Two gleaming black SUVs, the kind favored by diplomats and CEOs, had pulled directly up to the curb, ignoring the clearly marked "no stopping" signs. Doors opened almost simultaneously. Men in dark suits emerged first, fanning out slightly, their eyes scanning, movements economical and professional. Then, from the lead vehicle, stepped Ji-min's father. His expression was unnervingly calm, but his eyes held the dangerous stillness of a coiled viper. Flanking him was David Davies himself, lead counsel from the law firm, his face grimly determined, briefcase clutched like a weapon. 3 other lawyers, equally sharp-eyed and impeccably dressed, fell into step behind them, followed by aides murmuring into phones. And, trailing them, almost tripping over themselves to keep up, were several figures Ji-min recognized instantly, reporters from major Los Angeles news outlets, cameras shouldered, microphones extended, clearly tipped off and scrambling for the story. The GIA arrivals hall instantly transformed from a place of transit into a chaotic, high-stakes stage. Without a moment's hesitation, Ji-min's father strode through the automatic doors, his presence parting the crowd of onlookers like Moses parting the Red Sea. The effect was immediate, electric. Assistant Manager Peterson's placating smile vanished, replaced by slack-jawed astonishment. Officer Miller visibly froze, his belligerent posture deflating, his eyes widening in disbelief and something akin to panic as he registered the sudden, overwhelming shift in the power dynamic. Her father reached Ji-min first, ignoring everyone else for a crucial moment. His hand rested gently on her shoulder, his eyes searching hers, his voice low but fierce, meant only for her. "Are you all right, Ji-min? He didn't touch you." She managed a shaky nod, the knot of tension in her chest finally loosening enough to breathe. "I'm okay, Appa. Just angry." He gave her shoulder a firm squeeze, a silent transfer of strength, of protection, before turning, his gaze now sweeping over Miller and the stunned GIA managers with glacial contempt. The carefully controlled fury was palpable. "Gentlemen," his voice was dangerously soft, yet it cut through the surrounding buzz, commanding attention. "Perhaps one of you can explain precisely why my daughter, a senior executive here for a vital international business agreement, has been detained and subjected to this spectacle. He paused, letting the silence hang heavy. I have supported this airport's growth and development for nearly 30 years. I expect a certain level of professionalism, of basic human decency, extended to all visitors. Clearly, my expectations have been misplaced today. Your officer's ignorance and prejudice have not only insulted my daughter but have potentially jeopardized a significant partnership between our two nations before it even begins. Before the flustered Peterson could stammer a response, David Davies stepped smoothly forward, radiating calculated legal menace. Ms. Ji-min Park, he began, his voice crisp and cutting, addressing the managers but his eyes occasionally flicking towards Miller, who seemed to shrink with every word. Has been subjected to demonstrable defamation, emotional distress, and a flagrant abuse of authority constituting wrongful detention by your employee, Officer Miller. His actions appear overtly discriminatory, directly violating GIA policy and federal statutes. Davies didn't raise his voice, but his words landed like hammer blows. Be advised, our firm, Davies, Wright & Lee, is hereby formally notifying the Gateway International Airport Authority and Officer Miller personally of our intent to immediately commence civil litigation seeking substantial damages. Furthermore, we will be filing formal complaints demanding federal investigation with the U.S. Department of Transportation's Airline Consumer Protection Bureau and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission regarding GIA's failure to prevent racial profiling and ensure adequate staff training. We have documented witness statements and video evidence, he gestured vaguely towards the onlookers and reporters, and are prepared to issue a full press statement momentarily. The color completely drained from Miller's face. He opened his mouth, perhaps to protest, perhaps to apologize, but only a strangled croak emerged. He looked physically ill, trembling slightly, his earlier arrogance utterly extinguished, replaced by raw, naked fear. Assistant Manager Peterson finally found his voice, practically tripping over his words in his haste. Mr. Park. Mr. Davies. Ms. Park. Please, there must be some mistake. We sincerely apologize, this is unacceptable. Officer Miller is immediately suspended pending a full investigation. We will, of course, cooperate fully, compensate Ms. Park for any inconvenience. Ji-min's father cut him off with an icy wave of his hand. Compensation is irrelevant. Apologies are insufficient. His voice dropped lower, colder. What we require now, Mr. Peterson, is accountability. Not just for this officer, but for the systemic failures that allowed this to happen. We require concrete, verifiable commitments to ensure that no visitor to this airport, regardless of their ethnicity, their attire, or their country of origin, is ever subjected to such degrading, unprofessional, and prejudiced treatment again. Nothing less. Watching the scene unfold, the fear that had gripped Ji-min finally receded completely, replaced by a surge of empowering relief, fierce pride, and righteous anger. Seeing her father, the lawyers, the flashing cameras, seeing the swift, decisive reversal of power, was intensely validating. She wasn't alone. She wasn't powerless. The injustice was being seen, being challenged. Peterson, clearly out of his depth and realizing the gravity of the situation, nodded frantically and immediately spoke into his radio. Within moments, 2 different security supervisors approached Miller. There was a brief, low exchange. Miller didn't protest. He simply nodded mutely, his face ashen. They escorted him away, not towards the public exits, but towards a back office, out of sight. His shoulders were slumped, his confident stride replaced by a shuffling gait. The man who, minutes before, had wielded his authority with such casual cruelty now looked utterly broken, insignificant. The departure of Miller seemed to break a spell. Almost immediately, another man, older, radiating senior authority and sweating despite the air conditioning, rushed towards them, extending a hand towards Ji-min's father. Mr. Park, I'm Daniel Harrison, Director of Airport Operations. I came as soon as I heard. On behalf of Gateway International, please accept my deepest, most sincere apologies for the utterly unacceptable experience your daughter has endured. Harrison launched into a stream of further apologies, promising immediate, top-level reviews, a complete overhaul of cultural sensitivity and diversity training, new internal policies. His contrition seemed genuine, his alarm profound. The immediate standoff was over. Justice, or at least the beginning of it, had been swift. But the phones had been recording, the reporters were taking notes, and the consequences of Officer Miller's actions were only just beginning to ripple outwards. Echoes in the headlines, triumph in the boardroom. The immediate standoff was over. Officer Miller vanished into the airport's bureaucratic depths, apologies offered and accepted with icy formality. But in the hyperconnected digital age, the ripples from the confrontation spread like wildfire, far faster and wider than Jimin Park could have ever anticipated. Before she and her father, flanked by the formidable Mr. Davies and his legal team, had even left the chaotic scene at Gateway International Airport, the videos were already online. Shaky smartphone footage capturing Miller's aggressive stance, Jimin's defiant composure, the arrival of the legal cavalry, it became instant viral fodder. Hashtags bloomed across social platforms, hashtag Hanbok humiliation, hashtag GIA shame, hashtag stand with Jimin Park. By the time Jimin reached her hotel, exhausted but running on adrenaline and grim determination, her face was flickering across local news channels. Anchors with carefully neutral expressions narrated the developing situation at GIA. The narrative quickly exploded. National outlets picked it up, followed by international news wires, Global News Network, Eurowire, Asian Pacific News Agency. Headlines screamed variations on a theme: GIA security accused of racism after Hanbok incident, Korean tech exec humiliated, Gateway International under fire, the Hanbok herd round the world, airport profiling sparks outrage. Suddenly, Jimin wasn't just a businesswoman caught in an ugly encounter, she was a symbol. A reluctant icon. The public opinion backlash was swift and brutal. GIA, facing a PR nightmare of global proportions, scrambled into damage control mode. Within hours, Director Harrison, the same executive who had offered profuse apologies earlier, was standing before a hastily assembled bank of microphones, looking strained and reading from a prepared statement. He emphasized GIA's unwavering commitment to diversity, inclusion, and cultural respect, the standard corporate lines that sounded hollow in the face of the viral videos. He acknowledged the deeply regrettable incident, declared it an isolated event contrary to GIA values, and announced that, following a swift internal investigation, remarkably swift, given the circumstances, Officer Miller's employment had been terminated, effective immediately. Strict internal discipline would be reinforced, employee education system strengthened, the usual promises made under duress. Watching Harrison's uncomfortable performance on the hotel room television, Jimin felt a complicated mix of emotions. There was relief, certainly, that Miller faced tangible consequences for his actions. Accountability mattered. Yet, beneath the relief lay a persistent, bitter residue. Why did it take a potential lawsuit, viral videos, and international media pressure for basic decency to prevail? Why did she have to endure that public humiliation to spark this conversation? And this new role, unwilling symbol of Korean culture under siege, felt heavy, uncomfortable. She hadn't sought this spotlight, certainly not like this. But a nascent sense of responsibility began to stir. Perhaps this ugly incident could be turned into something constructive. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the infamous Los Angeles sun streaming through her window. Today was the day. The contract signing ceremony with Apex Innovations. The culmination of everything. As she prepared, she stood before the wardrobe, the emerald and pale dawn Hanbok hanging beside an impeccably tailored, conservative navy business suit. For a long moment, she hesitated. The memory of Miller's sneering face, his contemptuous words, strange outfit, Han what? Flashed vividly in her mind. The thought of facing more stares, more potential judgment, even just misplaced curiosity, felt exhausting. The suit beckoned, offering the safety of anonymity, the comfort of blending in. Wouldn't it be easier? Simpler? Safer? But then she thought of Clause 7b, the soul of the contract. She thought of her father's unwavering support, his life spent battling similar shadows. She thought of the young Korean-American student at the airport, her eyes bright with shared pride. To retreat now, to choose the suit, wouldn't that be validating Miller's prejudice? Wouldn't it betray the very essence of the partnership she was here to forge? No. Absolutely not. This Hanbok wasn't just clothing, it was her armor, her standard, her declaration. Resilience demanded it. With newfound resolve, she carefully dressed in the Hanbok, the familiar weight of the silk settling around her, feeling less like a burden now and more like a mantle of strength. Walking into the soaring, light-filled lobby of the Apex Innovations Tower felt like stepping into a different world. Heads turned, yes, but the energy was entirely changed from the hostility and indifference at GIA. Here, the gazes held curiosity, certainly, but also unmistakable respect, even a touch of awe. Staff members nodded politely, murmuring greetings. It seemed the news of yesterday's incident, and perhaps GIA's subsequent press conference, had preceded her. Before she even reached the reception desk, Robert Thompson, the CEO of Apex Innovations, a tall man with a worn demeanor that couldn't quite mask his sharp intelligence, strode across the lobby to meet her, hand outstretched. Ms. Park. Ji-min, he corrected himself with a smile, taking her hand firmly in both of his. Welcome. It's truly an honor to finally meet you in person. His expression turned serious. Listen, we were all absolutely appalled when we heard about what happened at GIA yesterday. Shocked and deeply embarrassed for our city. Please accept my sincere apologies that your arrival was marred by such ignorance. He paused, his gaze genuine. But I must also say, we were incredibly impressed by your reported courage and dignity under immense pressure. It speaks volumes. He gestured to her attire. And the Hanbok, it's truly breathtaking. Honestly, I can't imagine a more perfect visual representation of the harmony between tradition and innovation that our partnership aims to embody. You wear it beautifully. His heartfelt words, the genuine respect in his eyes, washed away the last vestiges of Ji-min's anxiety. This was the reception she had hoped for, the understanding she had banked on. This was Clause 7b made real. The contract signing ceremony itself, held in a top-floor conference room with panoramic views of the city, proceeded flawlessly. Amidst the polite volley of camera flashes from the assembled business press, Ji-min and Robert Thompson sat side by side, affixing their signatures to the hefty document that bound Novatech Dynamics and Apex Innovations together. It felt momentous, a quiet culmination after the previous day's storm. In the brief press conference that followed, Thompson spoke eloquently about the venture, highlighting not just the technological synergy but the shared commitment to cultural respect as a unique strength. He subtly referenced Ji-min's attire again, calling it a living symbol of the innovative spirit and deep heritage this partnership celebrates. Then, a reporter directed a question to Ji-min. Ms. Park, given the unfortunate incident yesterday, was there any specific reason you chose to wear the Hanbok again today? All eyes turned to her. Ji-min stepped calmly to the microphone, the emerald skirt whispering around her. She met the gaze of the press corps, her voice clear and steady. This Hanbok, she stated, represents centuries of Korean heritage and artistry. It also represents the spirit of innovation and mutual respect that defines the partnership between Novatech Dynamics and Apex Innovations. She paused, letting the words sink in. Yesterday's unfortunate event stemmed from individual prejudice. It cannot diminish the beauty of this garment nor the values it embodies for us. Wearing it today is an expression of confidence, in my culture, in this partnership, and in the future we are building together. A spontaneous burst of applause filled the room. Standing there later, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline, the signed contract secure in its titanium briefcase, Ji-min felt the tumultuous weight of the past 24 hours begin to settle. She was no longer just Ji-min Park, strategist. She was something more, something unexpected, forged in a crucible of prejudice but emerging with her dignity not just intact, but amplified. Woven legacy, threads of change. Something more. The phrase echoed in Ji-min Park's mind days later, back in the familiar, ordered calm of her sole office overlooking the bustling city. The whirlwind of Los Angeles, the GIA confrontation, the dramatic intervention, the successful contract signing, felt both surreal and intensely real, an experience that had irrevocably shifted something within her. The signed Apex Innovations Partnership Agreement, now physically manifesting as Project Chimera on Novateca's internal servers, was a tangible victory. Yet, the emotional landscape was far more complex than simple triumph. The humiliation hadn't entirely faded, the memory of Officer Miller's sneering face, the feeling of being pinned like an insect under the glare of public scrutiny, still brought a flush of heat to her cheeks. It was a stark, ugly reminder that prejudice wasn't some abstract concept discussed in diversity seminars. It was a visceral force, irrational and deeply entrenched, capable of erupting without warning even in the most mundane of settings. Gateway International Airport, a supposed portal connecting worlds, had, for her, become a stark symbol of the walls that still existed between them. Walls built of ignorance, fear, and the refusal to see beyond the surface. But alongside the lingering bitterness, something else had taken root, a quiet, steely affirmation. She hadn't crumbled. In the face of blatant disrespect, she had found a reservoir of composure, a deep well of dignity she hadn't fully known she possessed. Her strategic mind had kicked in, yes, analyzing options, calculating risks, deploying resources, the calls to Mr. Davies, to her father. That was instinct, training. But the refusal to meet Miller's aggression with her own, the choice to stand firm in her identity rather than shrink from it, that felt like something deeper. Resilience. Maybe even courage. It felt strange to apply the word to herself. And the Hanbok. Initially a carefully chosen symbol, a strategic element meant to embody the spirit of the Novatec Apex deal, the harmonious blend of tradition and cutting-edge technology, it had transformed under duress. It became more than just silk and thread, more than a nod to Clause 7b. It became her standard, her armor, a tangible link to the centuries of Korean artistry, wisdom, and endurance woven into its very fabric. Wearing it again the next day, walking into the Apex lobby with her head held high, hadn't just been about defiance, it had been about reclaiming the narrative, reaffirming her identity and the values the garment represented because they had been challenged. It was a profound lesson. Cultural symbols gain power not just from their history, but from the conviction with which they are worn in the present, especially in the face of adversity. Hanbok pride wasn't just about appreciating beauty, it was about asserting existence. The irony wasn't lost on her. Miller's ignorance, intended to diminish and marginalize, had inadvertently achieved the opposite. The media storm, the uncomfortable global spotlight, it had sparked conversations about cultural understanding, about racial bias in everyday encounters, about the very meaning embedded in traditional attire. Articles dissecting the history and beauty of the Hanbok appeared in publications that might otherwise never have mentioned it. Her personal ordeal, humiliating as it was, had become a catalyst, amplifying the very message of cultural respect the Novatec Apex partnership championed. It wasn't the path she would have chosen, but the outcome held a certain, undeniable power. A testament, perhaps, to how acts of prejudice can sometimes, paradoxically, strengthen the very things they seek to undermine. Ji-min Park's stand at Gateway International Airport reverberated far beyond the news cycle or the corporate world. It wasn't just about one executive, one airport, one offensive officer. It was a potent reminder that the tapestry of our interconnected world is woven with countless threads of diverse cultures, histories, and identities. Ignorance and prejudice seek to fray those threads, to create tears in the fabric. But courage, dignity, and the simple act of refusing to be erased can mend, strengthen, and even add new, vibrant colors to the pattern. Her quiet act of defiance echoed, demonstrating that resilience doesn't always roar, sometimes it simply stands its ground, clad in the quiet elegance of conviction. She showed that embracing one's heritage isn't a retreat into the past, but a vital source of strength for navigating the future. And perhaps most importantly, Ji-min's story became an inspiration, a quiet call to action for countless others, the other Ji-min Parks, who face their own daily battles against misunderstanding and bias in boardrooms, classrooms, streets, and airports around the globe. Her legacy isn't just a signed contract or a viral moment, it's in the subtle stiffening of spines, the refusal to remain silent, the courage sparked in others to wear their own identities with unapologetic pride. The threads of change are often spun from such quiet, unexpected moments of strength. Dignity, it turns out, is the most resilient fiber of all.